morning and welcome to the class. In the last class we completed the first two stanzas of the poem Church Going, and now we continue with the third stanza. So the second stanza of the poem ends with a line, reflect the place was not worth stopping for. I signed the book, donate an Irish sixpence, and reflect the place was not worth stopping for. So the speaker says that after all, visiting the church was not a very worthy thing. Now we move on to the third stanza. In fact, in the next three stanzas, the poet, the speaker meditates on the future of the churches. What will happen to the churches? I am reading the third stanza. Yet stop I did. In fact, I often do, and always end much at a loss like this, wondering what to look for. Wondering too, when churches will fall completely out of use, what we shall turn them into. If we shall keep a few cathedrals chronically on show, their parchment, plate, and pyx in locked cases, and let the rest rent free to rain and sheep, shall we avoid them as unlucky places? So this is the third stanza of the poem Church Going. Yet stop I did. Stop I did means I stopped. See, look at the inversion. Stop I did. The normal construction is I did stop. I did stop is in fact, it is more strong than I stopped. Yet stop I did. In spite of my thoughts that spending some time here was quite worthless, still I stopped. Yet stop I did. In fact, I often do. I often stop near the churches. I often remain inside the churches. In fact, I often do, and always end much at a loss like this. So when I was inside the church or I was around the church, I always feel puzzled. I don't know what to do. I feel quite uncertain what to say, what to think, or what to do while I was inside the church, and always end much at a loss like this, wondering what to look for. I wonder what are things to look for inside the church, wondering what to look for, wondering too when churches will fall completely out of use. So the speaker wonders what will happen to churches when people have no use for churches. What will happen to them? When churches will fall completely out of use, what shall we turn them into? What shall we make out of these churches? When churches will fall completely out of use, what we shall turn them into? If we shall keep a few cathedrals chronically on show, maybe we can preserve a few cathedrals as in their chronological order, something like for the future generation to study the history of churches. If we shall keep a few cathedrals chronically on show, their parchment with their parchment is a material made of skin, to write on. Their parchment, plate is a plate for collecting donations. Plate and pyx means a vessel for keeping the consecrated bread. Their parchment, plate, and pyx in locked cases, as though they are very valuable pieces kept in a museum. Their parchment, plate, and pyx in locked cases. Here in the previous line, we have the word chronicle. It could also mean something like a disease. Church as a disease-ridden institution. It could also mean that. A few cathedrals chronically show their parchment with their parchment, plate, and pyx in locked cases, and let the rest rent free. We can give the remaining churches to sheep as a shelter for sheep, and let the rest rent free, of course without charging any rent. We can give the remaining churches, the outdated churches, as a shelter for sheep without charging any rent free to rain, or they can be exposed. The churches can be exposed to rain and weather, and let the rest rent free to rain and sheep, Shall we avoid them as unlucky places? So this is a question. This stanza ends with a question. Shall we avoid them as unlucky places? The question is, will the churches be abandoned? Will the churches be avoided as places of ill omen, as places of bad luck? So this is the second stanza. I read it once more. Yet stop I did. I stopped there. In fact, I often do. This is a kind of practice with me. I often do it and always end much at a loss like this. I often feel uncertain what to do inside a church, at a loss like this, wondering what to look for, what are the things to look for inside the church, what to look for, wondering too when churches will fall completely out of use. There may come a time when churches will be no longer useful for people. People will very quickly begin to lose their faith. What we shall turn them into? When churches will fall completely out of use, what we shall turn them into? What shall we make out of these old churches? What we shall turn them into? If we shall keep a few cathedrals chronically on show. Now, the speaker is thinking about a few possibilities. Some of these churches can be preserved for future generations who may be interested in the history of churches. A few cathedrals chronically on show with their parchment, as I told you, is a material made of skin to write on the surface. Their parchment plate could mean a collection box, a collection plate, and pigs in locked cases, and let the rest rent free. We can give the remaining churches as a shelter for sheep, to keep sheep. Let us give them to the sheep without charging any rent, and let the rest rent free to rain and sheep. They could be exposed. Maybe the churches will be exposed to rain and weather, and they will gradually fall into decay. And let the rest rent free to rain and sheep. Shall we avoid them as unlucky places? So this is a possibility. The churches will be abandoned by people. People will avoid the churches as unlucky places, as places of bad luck, as places of ill omen. Shall we avoid them as unlucky places? Now we move on to the fourth stanza. Or, after dark, will dubious women come to make their children touch a particular stone, pick symbols for a cancer, or on some advised night see walking a dead one? Power of some sort will go on in games, in riddles, seemingly at random. But superstition, like belief, must die. And what remains when disbelief has gone? Grass, weedy pavement, brambles, buttress, sky. Or, so this is the next possibility. Or after darkness, or after dark, will dubious women come? Maybe the superstitious women may visit the church ground. Or after dark, will dubious women who are fond of superstition, will dubious women come to make their children touch a particular stone? They may come along with their children and make their children touch certain stones as good omen, as good luck. To make their children touch a particular stone, pick symbols. They may also pick symbols. Symbols are medicinal herbs. Medicinal herbs pick symbols for a cancer, to treat the disease, to treat the cancer disease, or pick symbols for a cancer. Or on some advised night, on certain nights, or on some advised night, see walking a dead one. They may come to the church ground in order to see their dead ones, their departed ones, visiting the graveyard. Advised night, see walking a dead one. Power of some sort will go on. Some sort of power will continue. The church is still has some power, and such power will continue. Power of some sort will go on in games, in riddles, seemingly at random. But it is very difficult to define this power. In games, in riddles. Riddle literally means a question which is very difficult to answer. You must have heard of the riddle posed by Sphinx in the Oedipus myth. And it was Oedipus who solved the riddle. and as a result he was made the king of thieves. In games, in riddles, seemingly at random is unsystematically. So the church still has its power, and it is sometimes very difficult to define it. Power of some sort will go on in games, in riddles, seemingly at random. But superstition, like belief, must die. Of course, people will lose their religious faith. It is a possibility, and it's also possible that they may lose their superstitions. But superstition, like belief, must die. In the same way, the belief dies, superstition may also die. But superstition, like belief, must die. And what remains when disbelief has gone? What will remain after the superstition loses? When the superstitious beliefs are lost in the passage of time, the church and its buildings will be left for mere grass. The area will revert to grass and pavement, weedy pavement, brambles, buttress and sky. So when the belief is gone, it is also possible that the superstition will also go. When the superstitious beliefs are lost in the passage of time, then will the buildings revert? Will the building of the church revert? Its area revert to grass? Weedy pavement. Pavement is a path for the pedestrians. It is weedy because it is untrodden. Nobody visits the church and the pavement becomes weedy. Grass, weedy pavement. Bramble. Bramble is a prickly shrub that belongs to the rose family. Brambles. Buttress. Buttress means a support to the wall. Buttress and sky. So this is the stanza, the fourth stanza. I read it once more. Or after dark. Now the speaker is thinking about another possibility. Or after dark, will dubious women come? Will women who are superstitious, will they come to the church ground along with their children to make their children touch a particular stone, because they consider a particular stone as a mark of good luck, and they will make their children touch that stone. Will they come for that purpose? Or in order to pick symbols, in order to pick certain herbs, medicinal plants, pick symbols for a cancer, to treat the disease, cancer. Or on some advised night, or this is also possible, on certain nights, certain pre-planned nights, they may visit the graveyard, advised night, in order to see walking a dead one, in order to see their departed near ones. Advised night to see walking a dead one. Power of some sort will go on, some kind of power. It is not very easy to define that power. Power of some sort, some kind of power will continue. To go on is to continue. Power of some sort will go on in games, in riddles, seemingly at random. But superstition, like belief, must die. Superstition will also come to an end. People may lose their faith, it is a possibility. In the same way, superstition may also come to an end. But superstition, like belief, must die. And what remains when disbelief has gone? A question mark. And what remains when disbelief has gone? Even the disbelief is disappeared. What will remain of the churches? And what remains when disbelief has gone? Only grass. Maybe there is the grass surrounding the church, the churchyard, grass, weedy pavement. Pavement is covered with weed because it is unused, it is untrodden. Weedy pavement, brambles or prickly shrubs, and buttress. Buttress is a support to the wall. Buttress and sky. So this is the fourth stanza. Now we move on to the fifth stanza. A shape less recognizable each week. So as time passes, the church becomes an institution. It becomes an institution which is less recognizable. It is difficult to recognize it. A shape less recognizable each week. A purpose more obscure. The purpose of the church also becomes obscure. It becomes vague. What is the purpose of the church? It's not easy to define. It is not easy to give an answer to this question. because the purpose becomes quite vague, it becomes unclear. A purpose more obscure, I wonder who will be the last, the very last, to seek this place for what it was. Now the speaker is asking us, who will be the very last person? Who will be the very last person to visit the church for what it is? I wonder who will be the last, the very last person to come to the church, to seek this place for what it is. Maybe one of the crew, member of a team. Maybe he is member of a team, one of the crew that tap and jot and know what Rudolph's were. A person who taps, who knocks and who writes down something, jots, and who wants to know what Rudolph's are. Rudolph is a gallery on top of the root screen of a church. What we call in Malayalam Palliyude Melmadam. Who taps and writes down and who wants to know what the Rudolph's were. Some ruin bibber. Maybe he is a ruin bibber. Bibber means a drinker, like a wine bibber. Here, the person is a ruin bibber. Ruin is the broken part of an old building or the broken part of a town. Some ruin bibber, he may be a person who is very much interested in ruins of the church. Some ruin bibber, randy for antique, a person who is much excited, one who is much excited. Randy for antique, one who is interested in collecting objects which are antique. Antique is collectible object of high value. Collectible object of high value because of its age is called antique. Some ruin bibber, randy for antique, or Christmas addict, or maybe he is a person who is very much interested to know about Christmas, one who is very much excited, enthusiastic about Christmas, or Christmas addict, counting on a whiff of gown and bands and organ pipes and myrrh. One who wants to know more about the gown which is kept inside the church, and bands, one who wants to know more about the musical bands and organ pipes which are kept inside the church, and myrrh is a fragrant gum, a gum that is having some fragrance. Or Christmas addict, counting on a whiff of gown and bands and organ pipes and myrrh. Or will he be my representative? And Larkin, the poet, thinks whether that person will be like Larkin himself, one who is not very clear about the purpose of the church, what the church stands for, or will he be my representative? So this is the fifth stanza. A shape less recognizable each week. The church is becoming just a shape which is very difficult to recognize. A shape less recognizable each week. A purpose more obscure. The purpose of the church becomes quite unclear. It becomes vague. I wonder, and then the speaker wonders, who will be the very last person to visit the church. I wonder who will be the very last to seek this place, who comes to this place, to the church, for what it was. And the speaker puts forward a few possibilities. Maybe he is one of the crew, member of a team, one of the crew who taps, who just knocks, and who writes down, and who wants to know more about Rudolph's. Maybe he is a ruin bibber, one who is much interested in the ruins of buildings. Some ruin bibber, one who is much enthusiastic for antique things, randy for antique, or Christmas addict. Maybe he is a Christmas addict who wants to know about the gown, the bands, the musical bands, the organ pipes which are kept inside the church, and myrrh is a fragrant gum. Or will he be my representative? Or maybe the visitor is someone like the speaker himself, who is not a very strong believer, one who is not very certain about the purpose of the church. Now I think we have two more stanzas remaining, which we will be doing in the next class. Thank you.